Welcome to the world's greatest minds, where the most successful, impactful, and creative game changers on the planet deliver their hardest hitting advice in 30 minutes or less. Every guest is specifically handpicked, there's no paid placements allowed, and every conversation is completely authentic and entirely unscripted. Big ideas, raw conversations, and real impact. This is World's Greatest Minds, and the revolution of thought starts now. Welcome to World's Greatest Minds. I'm so excited to introduce my friend, Bryan Post. He's one of the most influential voices in mental health and business innovation today. He was recently featured in CIO Views magazine as one of the top influential people in healthcare to watch. Bryan is a best-selling author of, wait for it, 18 books with more than 1 million copies sold globally. His groundbreaking work in trauma, attachment, and practice transformation has made him a trusted mentor to thousands of therapists seeking to escape burnout and build 7- and 8-figure practices that serve both their clients and their calling. Over the past 25 years, Bryan has founded more than 20 companies, exited multiple ventures for 6 and 7 figures, and generated well over $100 million in revenue in the social services sector alone. He's not just a therapist. He's a social service entrepreneur, speaker, publisher, and strategist who's engineered scalable models for practice success that challenge everything the traditional therapy world teaches. He's the creator of Bondify.ai, the world's first AI-driven parenting platform designed specifically to support adoptive and foster families. Bondify blends cutting-edge technology with Bryan's decades of clinical insight, making powerful trauma response guidance accessible 24/7 to the families who need it most. Whether he's coaching boardrooms or speaking to burned-out therapists at 3 a.m., Bryan delivers truth with compassion and a fire to help others rise. What a badass bio that is, dude. Bryan, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you.
Kasim, thank you so much. It's my honor, and I look forward to the time together.
Yeah, likewise. So you and I have hung out once a quarter for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we ever got as much direct time as I would have liked, but I think we're going to fix that right now. And I'm going to offer a backhanded compliment, if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
As I was going to school on you and prepping for this interview, the thing that just kept occurring to me is how extraordinarily well you've done in an impossibly difficult industry.
Mm.
Like, you want to talk about high stakes, low margin, high burnout, and yet you've found yourself not just successful, because that happens, right? There's always the unicorn, the magician, the person that just pulls it off. They just have the it factor. But you also found a way to help other people be successful too. If I said anything that you A, disagree with, or B, find offensive?
No, it's all very accurate, man. It's very accurate. That you, as a social worker, because that's what all my education is from, and I always refer to myself as a social worker because that's what I do. Is I serve society. You're always told in school that you don't get into this field to make money. So
Mm.
that is conditioned. So it's a poverty mindset that is reinforced throughout school. And no one ever discusses the fact that you have to make money to survive. And so then what happens is they've conditioned the brain that you don't get into this to make money. So you feel ashamed trying to accomplish any level of success and any level of financial freedom. So you feel ashamed to do that. You get satisfied with the status quo. And then you are working with the most stressed out, the most traumatized, the greatest pain, the greatest soul wounds that exist in society. And then people just burn out. And there's so many factors to that. And so I got into this work because I believe that, number one, God put me in this world to do this very specific work. I was blessed at some level to have entrepreneurship in my DNA, even though as an adopted child, my dad worked in a rock quarry for 35 years. My mom was a Head Start teacher for 25 years. So my adopted parents weren't entrepreneurs, but my biological father, his lineage, there was entrepreneurship. So I always had that mindset of wanting to be really successful. And then as I grew as a professional, I realized that I had to be compensated to create freedom for my family so that I could worry less about paying my day-to-day bills, which would allow me to focus on being the absolute best therapist, best educator, best business owner in social services that I could be. And then I just really found my niche in social services. It's what I love to do. I love to serve people. And it's been a very rewarding professional career for me. And I don't separate the personal from the professional. I am who I am wherever I show up, however I show up. And I've always wanted to empower others to be able to do the same. So at any level of professional success someone's at, I feel like I can help them get to the next level. Because, quite frankly, I believe that I am probably one of the most successful social service entrepreneurs that has existed. And so it's hard to measure that, but I know just from 25 years ago when I started, I was one of the first mental health professionals to ever have a website. So I've
Mm.
always been ahead of the curve. So I just want to keep uplifting and empowering people. And then on the flip side of that, I'm still serving families every single day. I talk to some parent almost every day, and I talk to my team. I've got a team of about 75 folks in Northern California. They're all rock stars going in, working in homes with families. So I'm very much in the trenches and always have been.
Well, first of all, what a beautiful story you have. Thank you for sharing that with me. Second, you said something earlier I disagree with. You said it's hard to measure the fact that you're one of the most successful social service entrepreneurs who's ever existed. I don't think it's hard to measure.
Hmm.
You've done $100 million in gross revenue. Money's how we keep score. You
Yeah.
know, you're a nine-figure entrepreneur. The number of entrepreneurs just in any industry that have hit nine figures, I'm sure is one tenth of one tenth of one tenth of 1%.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you've done that in a sector that, like you said, generally speaking, doesn't allow for profitability, margins, growth, scale, I think is phenomenal and something you should be really proud of. I'm curious if you don't mind, if you can flash back for me, how do you reframe an industry in that way? Everybody else is telling you, you do it this way. This is the way that it's done. Right now, looking at Bryan Post, it's like, oh, he's smarter than everybody and he figured it out. But back then, I bet you it was a lot different. It was you're crazy, you're stupid, you're greedy, you're something. So how do you do that? How do you go against the grain and see the lanes?
You know what's very interesting? Number one, most adopted children have problems with authority. So I learned really early in my professional career that I had problems with authority. I was fortunate to have a mentor who believed in me. He saw something in me and he said to me one day, I was telling him about the person I was working for, and he just said, "You could do that yourself." And I was like, "Okay." And so on the drive home from visiting with him, I was thinking about it. I was like, "Yeah, I could do this." And so I called him and I said, "I can do it." And he helped me. He gave me the seed capital to start my first business when I was 25 years old. And that was my first mental health, it was an outpatient mental health business. I did not even know how to spell business. I promise. I did not know how to spell business. But one thing that I received from my father who raised me is a work ethic like no one else's. I watched this man for 35 years work in a rock quarry, come home covered in lime dust. And so I started working when I was 6 years old. Work has always been my friend. It's never been my foe. So I knew I could work hard. And I believe working hard, not taking everyone else's excuses and limitations into my awareness, which I don't do. I kind of walk by the beat of a different drummer. So everyone else is going right. I'm typically going left. It's just how I've been my entire life. And so it's just, kind of my personality and my DNA is kind of framed to approach things the way I approach things. And God just happened to put me in mental health, just happened to put me in social services. And I just have my personality. But it's the only kind of personality that is going to make a significant impact in this field. And I've been doing that at a very high level for 25 years. And so for 25 years, I have been basically teaching a counter approach to parenting, a counter approach to working with families, a counter approach to working with children, and a counter approach to being able to run your business and be successful. And funny story, Kasim, when I first started out, I'm gonna make this super quick. I was on
Bro,
my
make
on
it
my
long.
way.
I'm enthralled. So yeah, you take the long way, dude.
I was on my way to visit my best friend. We grew up together in a little country town in Mountain View, Oklahoma. There were 2,000 people in the town when we grew up. She went to Harvard. She is a law professor at UCLA. Her husband also went to Harvard. He was a successful attorney. They had moved to Beverly Hills. I was flying out there to visit them for the weekend, and I was reading a Time or a Forbes magazine of the richest people in the world. So I'm reading this magazine. So we go out to dinner that night, and I'm talking to her husband, whose father was a successful Beverly Hills entertainment attorney. So my friend and I, we grew up country poor. Like we didn't know nothing about money. Our parents scraped by and provided for us the best that we could. So at dinner that night, he said, "How much would be enough money for you?" And I was like, if I had $4 million, man, I could take care of all my friends and family. I'd be set. And then in that same conversation, To his credit, and he's pretty narcissistic guy, very egocentric, but to his credit, he just let a country boy, shoot off his dreams. In that same conversation, I said, hey, I was reading about the Waltons today. These are Sam Walton's heirs. And did you know that they're worth 25 million each? And he said, no, I think they're worth more than that. And I was like, no, that's what the magazine said. And then later in the conversation, this was back when Mark Cuban, who owns the Mavericks, was getting fined by the NBA. So at that point, they had fined him $1 million. And a reporter said, well, Mark, how much are you going to let? They've already fined you $1 million. How much are they? You going to keep going? And he said, oh, this is what I said to him, to my friend. I said, Mark said, I'm worth 13 million. How much do they want? And he said, I think Mark Cuban's worth more than 13 million. And so then the night went on. We had a great weekend. So I'm flying home and I'm reading the Forbes magazine again. And then I'm also reading this book by the biography of Benjamin Franklin, which I think is also a part of what separates me from most people in my field, is I've always been an obsessive reader. So I'm reading the magazine and I realized the Waltons weren't worth 25 million each. They were worth 25 billion. Mark Cuban wasn't worth 13 million. He was worth 13 billion. I realized in that moment, Kasim, and this was a life-changing moment, I did not even know what $1 million was. I did not know. I had no concept. I was just saying 1 million, 4 million, 25 million. I didn't even know what 1 million was. That's why I could not even read billion. And when somewhere in that same flight, about a 3-hour flight, I'm back to reading my Benjamin Franklin biography, and I read the section where he says he set out to double his income. And I thought to myself, I don't know what $1 million is, but I know that I can double my income every year. I know I can do that. And that's eventually
Wow.
going to get me wherever I want to get to. And that's what I set out to do. And when I got up to needing to get to $250,000, I asked my audience, and I'm lecturing all over the country. I asked my audience, I said, does anyone in here know a mental health professional who's making $250,000 or more a year? Because I knew through reading all my books that I had to have a mentor. I had to be around people thinking on that level. One lady in a room of about 100 raised her hand and said, yeah, I know someone. So at the end of the conference, she came up. It wasn't her, but she knew a guy, a psychologist, and she said, I know he's making $250,000 a year. So I got his number from her. I called him the next week. I said, hey, this is who I am. I'm looking for a therapist, mental health professionals making $250,000 a year. He's like, well, I'm not really making $250,000 a year. I'm a professor. My wife's a professor. So combined, we make $250,000 a year, but we're thinking about starting this business. I ended up in that call. I ended up giving him more business counsel than I got from him. But then I realized that I was going to have to start a business. In order to get to 250 and beyond, I was now going to have to start a business. And so that's what I did. That was the next level of what I did.
The thing that I love that you do, that I bet you was as much a surprise to you as it was to anybody else, is you're one of the few industries that I think AI will probably never.
No, I disagree.
Oh, well, okay, fight me on it, please.
I think AI is going to completely disrupt mental health. Now, there's other
Really?
aspects of social services, child welfare and child protective services, the investigative people, and the kind of the what is it, the Medicaid people, the people who are on social service programs. AI, probably that's a long ways off. But for therapy and mental health, AI is going to completely disrupt. And I'll tell you why. It's because after the pandemic, therapists started wanting to see people virtually. So
Mm,
before the pandemic, sessions with a therapist usually was in an office in person. Well, I was never an in the office in person. I was a in your living room person. So I traveled around the world working with families in their homes, in their living rooms. So I never did want to be in an office anyway. I thought that was a sterile environment. After the pandemic, all therapists started wanting to go to doing virtual sessions. And I was like, that's a problem because you have a platform right now called BetterHelp. BetterHelp has 100,000 therapists on it. They're all doing virtual. What's going to happen is that AI is going to assimilate all that data from all those conversations, turn me into an avatar, and then I'm going to be able to have a conversation with you that is probably better than what any therapist can do. And so I've told my team this for the last 3 years, and I told them not only is AI going to disrupt mental health, but I'm going to be a part of it. And that's why I created Bondify. Bondify is my first step into disrupting mental health because I believe that based on using my app, it's completely programmed with my data, with my knowledge base. I believe it is just as effective as any therapist. And it's available 24/7 to answer a parent's questions and to guide them through a stressful situation. So I think mental health is at risk. And just like AI is going to disrupt a lot of industries, mental health professionals aren't thinking about it, but they're on the chopping block.
Man, that is first of all, the point that you made about the digitization of a previously analog framework actually set the therapists up for destruction because they taught us, like they taught us, hey, it's okay to do this virtually. It's okay to engage with the digital avatar. And so interesting that they would have like kind of led themselves to their own execution. I never thought about that, but dude, I feel like you're exactly right. The thing that I was considering when I thought you were untouchable, and maybe it's because I didn't understand what Bondify does, is I figured where an adult can engage with an AI tool for therapeutic reasons and purposes, I don't know that any of us would ever want to put our child front facing with AI. Do you disagree with that? Do you think that the kids in AI can engage?
I let me tell you, the mental health system is so screwy, and a part of that is because we have so much unconscious resistance and bias to our own self awareness and our own self exploration. Is that we avoid taking parents into a deep process of their own self exploration. So when we avoid that, we go automatically to the kids. So all of mental health is focused on kids and their behaviors, and that's how you get diagnosis, and that's how you get medication. And parents would be quick to place their child in front of an AI if they thought it was going to solve the problem. So I have no qualms about that whatsoever. But I don't think, and I tell people this all the time. Number one, being in person is going to become a premium. Number two, if parents are going to put their kids in front of I believe that if AI will eventually be more effective than any therapist doing virtual therapy that's going to be out there.
Wow. And why more effective? Because it's objective
It's
or
so
just more
it's so much
powerful?
so much smarter. It can pull theoretical models and frameworks from everywhere, including the brain, and be reflective and remember and guide and give suggestions. It's just so smart. And that's what I knew. And I've been doing this for 25 years now. And so 23 years ago, I said at the University of Arkansas Medical School, and this is all because of my model of the way I see human behavior. I said, if you can give me any family in here, and I had been watching Robert Allen. So I have all these entrepreneurs as my mentors and my gurus. And then I bring this into social services. So I say shit that people are like, oh my God, what is he talking about? And I said, because Robert G. Allen, who was the no money down guy, had said, put me in any city, give me 3 days, and I'll close four deals or make make $1 million. People didn't believe him. He did it. So I said, you give me a family who's worked with a therapist for 3 years or more, and in 90 days of coaching, I will bring them further along than any amount of therapy that they've done. Because I knew, it might have even been 30 days of coaching. I knew that if I applied my framework of working with families to kids, that I could have more results and more impact than what most therapists can have in years if they accomplish it at all.
Man, that's amazing. So talk to me a little bit about that difference. Why is your framework so much more potent than the traditional framework? What do you do differently?
It's easy. It's a love-based model. See, people don't realize that they operate fundamentally out of fear. And all the parenting models that exist, all the traditional classical parenting models that exist, not only are they stress and fear inducing, but I believe that they are rooted in generational trauma. And all that generational trauma, which was from slavery and from the Holocaust and from war, when times when people didn't allow emotion, could not allow emotional expression, then we formulated all these parenting tools and techniques that just mimic that trauma, that generational trauma. So all of our parenting techniques now are suppressive. They're emotionally suppressive. Well, emotion is what generates behavior. But then if you go and work with a child, if a clinician works with a child, the dominant psychology model is cognitive behavioral psychology. So it's all about changing the thinking. Well, that's actually backwards because our cellular system has a whole body of awareness and consciousness before it even becomes a thought. And so when we're not working with the body and when we're not working with the emotions, which is what trauma really is, trauma is emotional, it's not cognitive, then we're missing the boat completely. And so my model, which is a love-based model, so I say there are only two primary emotions, love and fear. The dominant model is fear-based. Well, my model is love-based. When you apply my model, where we've been applying a fear-based approach, there's just no equivalent match for how much more powerful a love-based model is when you can really be mindful and regulated and loving in the interaction.
Man, so the thing that you said about, and I'm gonna misquote you already, but actions stem from emotions, and trying to change the action is backwards because you have to first influence the emotions.
Yeah.
That resonated so, so deeply, and I'm curious, and I anticipate knowing your answer. Do you feel like this extends past childhood? Like, is this the way that we should be engaging with each other, engaging with ourselves?
This is human behavior. And it's so interesting. Bruce Lee, long dead but immortalized, said the most powerful lesson you can learn in life is the ability to master how to be calm. So the most powerful lesson you can learn in life is to master the ability to be calm. Herbert Benson in the 1970s was a Harvard physiologist. He said when we what we do when we become stressed is we constrict into survival. So we stop breathing. We start taking very short, ineffective breaths, which actually causes the system to collapse into itself. Now, fast forwarded to the 2000s, Joseph Lado, a New York University neuroscientist, wrote a book called The Emotional Brain, said in times of stress, our thinking becomes confused and distorted, and our short term memory is suppressed. All this is connected. When we are stressed, which we are unconsciously, we're not even aware of it. We're not thinking clearly and we cannot remember. And stress happens so fast. So then what happens in relationship is you say something that threatens me. We could go all into the brain. You say something that threatens me. I have a stress reaction. That stress reaction causes my thinking to become confused and distorted, suppresses my short term memory. I stop breathing effectively. And then that drives my confused and distorted actions and behaviors back towards you, which then puts us in a negative feedback loop. And then
Mm.
we don't know how to get out of it. Now, if that's a parent and a child, or even if that's two adults, whichever adult is the most powerful in that negative feedback loop is the one who's going to win. So that's how we end up controlling and suppressing and focus on changing other people when they're doing something that we dislike or don't approve of, because we're using power and control. We're not using influence and regulation and love and understanding, which are the real tools to transformation.
So how do we do that? If I want to break that feedback loop, let's say that you and I are we're good friends in a strong relationship, but the negative feedback loop has started. I've lobbed a tennis ball at you or vice versa. How do you break it? What are the steps?
It's simple, it's not easy. The one step is stop and breathe.
Hmm.
Just stop and breathe. That is the one quintessential step that starts everything. So if we're already in a negative feedback loop, one of us has got to stop and start breathing, because until we start breathing, cortisol is flushing through our brain, confusing and shutting everything down. When we start breathing, we turn on oxytocin, which is our brain's anti stress hormone. And the significance of all of this is that even without words, it's just a vibrational exchange. My amygdala, my fear receptor in my brain, when I am stressed, I am sending out a vibration to you. Your amygdala is looking into your brainstem for a similar experience and then sends back a matching vibration. One of us has got to dial down our amygdala, and the only way you do that is through breathing. So one of us has to stop and breathe. And as soon as we can stop and breathe, we can slow down. All of a sudden, our thinking starts to come back online, not so confused and distorted. Our short-term memory opens up. I remember that Kasim is my friend. I remember that Kasim loves me. I also remember that no one's going to die. What we're probably arguing about is not that serious, and everything's going to be okay. And then one of us just says, okay, man, okay, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. One of us is not gonna die. That's a really important thing for all of us to remember.
Yeah,
Like on an anthropological scale, I think we always up the ante when it's really not that big a deal.
you're absolutely right, because that's what happens in our amygdala and our brainstem. The moment we become stressed, we constrict into survival. And when we constrict into survival, the only thing your amygdala is focused on is survival. So, what I always tell parents in times of stress with their kids, the first thing you got to do is you got to take a deep breath. The second thing you got to do is you got to say, I'm not going to die. And the third thing you do is say, we're going to be okay. Just freaking dial it down because we are so prone to insanity. And Einstein says insanity is the doing the same thing and expecting a different result. That's insanity. Why do we do that? Because of stress and fear, because your thinking's confused and distorted and you cannot remember. So you keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. You've got to stop and breathe.
This is profound, man. Like you said, how was the quote, Brian? It's
Simple, it's not easy
simple, but not easy.
because
Because
we're not
it is the
wired.
hardest thing to remember to do when you're stressed out is to stop and breathe.
It's almost impossible. It's
So how do you do
almost
that? Is there you got a rubber band tied around your
I
wrist? Like,
no, no, here's the beautiful part of it. Because we're all human and we're all imperfect, the way you do it is you mess up. You
mm,
mess up and then you take responsibility and you review it and say, when did I not breathe? When was I not mindful? When should I have caught myself in that dynamic? You review it, you apologize, and you do better the next time. And there are two ways the brain changes. There are only two ways the brain changes: repetition and emotional impact. See, we're all afraid of having a big argument. We're all afraid of having a big disruption. But that's actually the best thing that can ever happen to us if we're willing to take responsibility and accountability and own our role in the situation. Then we apologize and then we do better. We learn from it. That's emotional impact. The repetition is just doing it over and over and over and over again. That's how you
mm.
start rewiring the brain.
There's a little ego death that happens every time you have to apologize for something like that.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing because you know what? Most of us did not grow up in homes with parents who apologize. They
Yeah,
were they were usually wrong 40 to 50% of the time, but they
right.
would never apologize. So as adults, we have such a hard time apologizing because we don't have any blueprints for it.
Yeah, I've got a my 8-year-old is a wrecking ball of demon hellfire bent on death and destruction, dude. He is something special, just a force of nature, and I love him, and he activates me just with a look, you know what I mean? He does
Love
this thing, I think it's from a video game or a meme, but he does this thing where he puts his fingers on his face and he looks at me like I'm stupid. Like, I'll say something and he'll do this thing, and I could, you know what I mean? Like, I was just like, "Oh." And the thing that I've noticed is I'm modeling this behavior because to the point that you made, I don't remember the scenario exactly, but I lost my temper, and I'd been tracking how long it'd been since I lost my temper, and I was doing okay. Lose my temper with my kids, feel horrible. I go back and I apologize to them later, and I'm like, "Sam, Ronan, I'm so sorry I lost my temper. It's not gonna happen again." And I don't remember the timeline, but I swear to God it was within an hour. Ronan had done something that normally he would, be very petulant about, and instead he comes to me and goes, "Hey, I'm really sorry I did that. I'm not gonna do that."
he modeled you.
And I was like, "Oh my god, what is happening, and how do I," and then I
Yeah.
realized, I'm like, "Oh, this is all my fault.
Children
I'm the
learn through
one."
modeling.
Yeah.
Children learn through modeling, and you were willing to take responsibility. But let me help you with something. The next time he triggers you, because that's what it is, a trigger. So if he gives you that funny look, I want you to stop. I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to ask yourself this question: how do I feel? How am I feeling right now? So you got to stop. You got to get in touch with. So let's say you're feeling agitated. Let's say you're feeling pissed off. And then the second question after that is, when have I felt this way before?
Oh,
How far
wow.
back can you go? And then, so when have I felt this way before? And then you can even ask, when was the first time I felt this way? Because I would bet 9 times out of 10, his 8-year-old self is triggering your 8-year-old self. So you go back and you explore what was going on in your life when you were around 8 years old. And I guarantee you he's triggering something. It's just, that's what a trigger is just a restirring of an old memory. That's all it
Mm.
is. And it really has, the person who's triggering us is actually giving us a gift to work through something that we hadn't worked through before. So when we get triggered, it's a great opportunity for our own growth and our own well-being. The problem is, in our society, our tendency is just to blame and get pissed off and fight back, as opposed to just take responsibility, connect with how you're feeling, ask yourself, when have I felt this way before? And then all of a sudden you realize now you're regaining your power, because otherwise you're giving your 8-year-old power over you. He's making you dance. As soon as he gives you that little look, he's making you dance. he's taking all your power. But the moment you take a deep breath and the moment you connect to your emotion, see, this is where your frequency increases. You connect to your emotion, your frequency increases, and then you connect to where that came from. Now you're like, whoa.
Mm.
And he completely disappears. He completely disappears because now you're back in that holy shit. And then you look at him and all of a sudden you realize he's just 8 years old and he's probably mimicking the same looks that you give him or some other adult he's watched you give a sly
Yeah.
little.
Funny, dude. If we can play therapy here for a minute, as I asked myself that question, when have I felt that way before? And then the one that got me was, when was the first time I felt that way? I was around 8 years old, and my aunt's husband, he's a man named Dewey, Uncle Dewey. Dude, Uncle Dewey hated me. That dude
Mm,
just did not love that I existed. I could always
mm,
when I came into a room, you just felt this, like,
oof,
just this furor, and at one point, I don't remember what happened, I think I got bad grades, and so, dad's not around, mom keeps thrusting Uncle Dewey on me because she thinks I
mm,
need a male figure,
mm,
and he took me out to his backyard, and he's giving me whatever lecture he's giving me, and I yawned at him. My
mm.
little act of defiance was to yawn, like I
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
and dude takes a hand to my face harder than I've ever been hit
Mm,
to that point, rattles my teeth. And
mm.
I remember just being so shocked and so jarred, and I don't know why exactly those 2 things are connected, because I feel like the avatar's reversed, but that's that's the feeling.
Well, I'll tell you exactly why they're connected, because of the feeling. Because his 8-year-old vibration that he sends when he's feeling whatever he's feeling, he sends a vibration to your amygdala, which then goes down in your brainstem and looks for a similar vibration. That was the vibration you felt with Uncle Dewey. Uncle Dewey elicited that vibration. So then that's what comes up. That's what you react to. And so then what happens is you're making him Uncle Dewey in that moment. So now you just had a breakthrough because you don't want to do that to your 8-year-old. So what
Right.
you have to do, and this is the other thing that we don't do, Kasim, is we don't grieve. See, I believe the biggest challenges that we have in relationship comes from unexpressed grief. We don't grieve the pains that we've had because there was no room. Who was there for little 8-year-old Kasim when Uncle Dewey smacked the shit out of him? Oh my God, that is a horrible thought to think about. Just like your own 8-year-olds. I mean, it just makes me sad just to even think about it right now. To think about a grown man just smacking some little kid whose father isn't there, whose mom's doing the best she can, who's there to like make it okay for him to be upset and sad. And so no one is. So then what happens is that traumatic experience gets stored in your brain and in your body system, and it just sits there and it's
Mhm.
just waiting. Now, the flip side is that Uncle Dewey could also be the catalyst to why you've grown into the badass that you are. Because trauma, the opposite of trauma is success. The opposite to trauma is when you can take that trauma and you can use it as fuel. And this is what most all successful entrepreneurs have in common is they have some kind of significant traumas in their life that drive them, but sometimes to insanity, but drive them to be really successful.
Dude, you're a beautiful human, Brian.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. What a lovely soul you have. So, the thing that I'm acutely aware of is I actually feel, and I wish I realized this at the beginning of the interview, because I would have changed everything that I talked to you about, and I'd love to do another one with you.
Sure.
I feel ill-equipped to even begin to ask you. It's when I'm talking to truly one of the world's greatest minds, the thing that I know is I'm so ignorant I can't even tee up the conversation properly, right? So, like, what is it that I'm not asking you that I should be asking? If I were to offer, like, as we close this out, the last words to you, what should I have started this conversation with?
Oh man, I think you started it perfectly. I think that, I'm envious that you have a podcast called The World's Greatest Minds, and you get to talk to the world's greatest minds. And the beauty of that is you get to be a student to all these people who have these different levels of expertise and knowledge. And so you're not supposed to know anything specifically. And I think that that's really the moral of the story is we all have to get back to a beginner's mind. We all have to be students all the time. We all have to be seeking just to slow down and not to be so filled with ego that we know everything, whether we're parents or whether we're business owners, whether we're entrepreneurs. because we can always learn. And if we're always seeking to learn in any situation, if you're seeking to learn something, St. Francis said, seek first to understand and then to be understood. You know, we attribute that to Stephen Covey, but St. Francis said that first. If we're always seeking to understand, man, it just changes the whole dynamic of relationships and the way we show up in the world. So I think this has been a perfect conversation.
I love you, dude. Where do people find you if somebody wants to follow you, work with you? Where do they go?
Yeah, bryanpost.com. Brian with a Y. People love to spell my name with an I. Or I post a lot of videos on my Instagram, Bryan Post Official.
Okay. Dude, this has been an extraordinary, extraordinary conversation. Y'all, if you're listening to this, you've been listening to Bryan Post, who's one of the most influential voices in mental health and business innovation today. Brian, you truly are one of the world's greatest minds. I'm so grateful to you and for you for being here. And
Thank
I
you,
hope we get to
Kasim.
do this again.
Thank you. My pleasure.
You've just heard another powerful episode on World's Greatest Minds. For links, resources, and full show notes from this episode, go to worldsgreatestminds.com, where you can also subscribe so you never miss another episode. Drop us a review because your feedback fuels the mission, and share this with somebody who's willing to buck the status quo. Most importantly, tell us who you think we should interview next. Nominate the people who you believe have the results, the track record, and the brilliance to truly qualify as one of the world's greatest minds. Join us weekly as we forge innovation in real time. This is World's Greatest Mind. The revolution of thought continues with you.